everyone. Welcome to my webinar. I'll first talk about school attendance law, and that applies to both primary and secondary school. And after that, I'll talk about the preparations for secondary school. So that's for children who are now 12 or sometimes a bit older, a bit younger, who have finished primary school. So if that's not your case, then you may also skip the last part, of course. A little bit about myself. So my name is Amidst. You see a picture of me on the left side. Since 12 years, I have my business Nu2NL. I help international families find a school for their children, and I advise a lot about education. I've also written a lot of articles and recorded some YouTube videos. So you can find a lot of information from me online. And I'm married to an American, and we live in Amsterdam. We have two sons, and they're a bit older now. They're 15 and 13, so they both go to secondary school. And you can see them here in Philadelphia, where my in-laws are from. So like I said, first we'll talk about the Dutch school attendance law. And the first thing you need to know is that it's very strict. And that means that from the first day of the month following a child's 5th birthday, they are obliged to go to school. And that means that when school is in session, your child has to be in school. And most children, they already start school the day after the 4th birthday. And that means that the first year is more flexible. So then you can still take them out or go on extended vacation or let them sleep a bit more when they're tired. But when they are 5, that's not possible anymore. So that's very important to know. They are obliged to go to school until age 16 or until they have a diploma for HAVO or VWO or MBO level 2. And that is called a start qualification. And that means that with this qualification, they are prepared for the labor market. And a lot of students, they continue to study, but then they are not obliged anymore. So that's very important to know as well. And from students who graduate from HAVO, they're usually 17 and VWO are 18. So then the age of 16 does not apply because they don't have this start qualification yet. And MBO is a school that follows after VMBO. So with VMBO, they're not done yet. So knowing this law, you should know that the children may only miss school under very specific circumstances. And that could be an important family celebration, like a wedding, for example, of a close family member, or family emergency. So when it happens that someone is very sick or passes away, that is a reason that you can ask time off from school. And those circumstances in Dutch are called gewichtige omstandigheden. So I've written a lot of things in cursive, and they are the Dutch words that are very important for you to know. And it can also be that the parents cannot take vacation during the school vacations because of work. So especially parents who work in seasonal jobs or with tourism, for example, they of course cannot take off during the summer vacation. And then you can also ask time off during the school year. Also for religious celebrations, you can ask your child to miss school. And you should know they can only take off on the day of the celebration, or when it's multiple day event, then on multiple days. But you're not allowed to go to your home country to celebrate this event because it's only the day of the celebration that you can take off. So that's very important too. When your child is sick, of course, they cannot go to school. I know in some countries you need to bring a doctor's note to school. That is not needed in the Netherlands. You just call as a parent and you say your child is sick. And you should look at the website of the school, which number you need to call, or maybe they want an email, or maybe they have a parent portal like Paro, for example. So just check that you know to call in sick in the right way. And usually a doctor's note is not needed unless they're sick for multiple days. Then it could be that the school asks for that, but yeah, that really depends. And um, and then when your child is better, then you bring them to school again. So yeah, it's not a big deal in that respect. If your child needs to go to the dentist or to the GP, it's preferable that they go after school hours, but sometimes that's not possible. That you can only make an appointment during school hours, and then you have to let the teacher know as well. And then when they're done at the dentist or the GP, then you bring them back to school. There are some exceptions for children who are still 5-year-old, because it's allowed that they miss 5 hours per week, and you don't need to have a particular reason for that. You cannot accumulate those hours. So it's just 5 per week, and then next week, the next 5 hours kick in. And if your child is very tired after a school week, then it can also be that it's allowed to take them 10 hours per week out of school, but then you have to ask permission from the principal. But that only applies to children who are still 5. So when they turn 6, then that's all over. I also often get a question from international parents that they want their child to attend a school abroad. That is another exception for the Dutch school attendance law. This is allowed for only 1 school year, and there's a special form that you have to fill out. You find it on the website of the municipality usually. And then you first arrange a school in the other country. They have to fill out the form as well. So they have to declare that your child is welcome there, and what the plan of school attendance is. And then after your child has attended the school year or a few months, then they also have to declare that indeed your child has been present. And if you hand in those letters, then your child is exempt from the Dutch school attendance law. When it exceeds 1 year, then the Dutch authorities assume that you don't live in the Netherlands anymore, and then you have to deregister from the Netherlands. That's also an option, but that will also have consequences on your taxes and your child benefits and other things, insurance. And so before you deregister your child, you really have to understand how that all works and what could happen with that afterwards. But for 1 school year, you're fine, and your child may miss going to school in the Netherlands. If that's your plan, it's also important to arrange with the Dutch school if your child could come back afterwards. It's not guaranteed that they will keep the place, so always ask in advance. And if your child doesn't speak Dutch for a whole year, it could be that they are behind academically and language-wise. So also make sure that you arrange with the school what they need to do to keep up with the language so that they can seamlessly transition to the next grade again. So nothing is guaranteed. You really have to arrange that yourself. But it can be a very nice experience for your child, or to be close to their family. So it does have advantages, but make sure to arrange it well. So if you want to ask time off, you really have to follow this procedure very carefully. There are different types of forms. So you first need to ask for the right form. And usually the admin at school can give you the form, or maybe the principal, and then tell them for what reason you need to take off. So is that an important family celebration or emergency, or because of work? Because those are 2 different forms. And read it very, very carefully, because you only get 1 chance to fill it out. So important family celebration is a wedding of a close relative, and usually they specify in up to the 3rd degree related to the child, so not to the parents. and you need to hand in proof. So in this case, the wedding invitation, so that they can see that indeed by that date your child needs to be off. And use the correct wording on the form. So don't call it vacation, because it's not. You're not going on vacation. You are going to attend an important ceremony, for example. And don't say that your great aunt is going to get married, for example, because that's too far related to the child. So then you won't get permission for that. And what the principal also pays attention to is, do the parents have any influence over the date and the timing of the event? So when other people are going to get married, then they set a date. So then the parents don't have influence over that. But when it's a family reunion, or if you want to visit a newborn cousin, then they might ask you why exactly at that time. So why don't you go during the school vacations to have this ceremony or festivity, for example? So then they might not give permission. So that is very important, that you check all the reasons. On the form, they also specify that cheaper flight tickets are not a good reason to take off from school, or when you have two children who have a different vacation schedule, then it's not allowed to take one child off because the other one already has off. So read this very well, make sure you understand it, because you get one chance. And don't forget to submit proof of the event. And when your reason is that, for example, a grandparent is sick in another country, then they might ask proof from the hospital or some other medical proof. And when they happen to be to have passed away, then they might need the death certificate or another invitation for the funeral, something like that. Usually those things happen very sudden, so yeah, you just call them, call to the school that your child has to be off because someone passed away in your close family and you have to leave right now. But make sure that later you send them the information that is needed. And first ask permission, and only after you got your permission, then buy your plane tickets. I've seen many international parents, they thought they could get permission, so they already booked everything, and then the principal refused. And that is a problem, because you cannot go there. And you're not entitled to 10 days off per year. And that is also something that international parents think, that they can just take those 10 days if they want to. But that's not how it works. What those 10 days mean, that up to 10 days, the principal could give permission, but they could also refuse. So even if you ask for 1 day, they can still refuse. And if you need beyond 10 days, then the truancy officers have to look at it. So then the principal is not allowed to decide on that. That is what those 10 days mean. So don't make the mistake that you think you can get off, book everything, and then the principal says, no, there's no valid reason, because then you have a big problem. And what your problems could be is that you risk a fine of 100 euros per day per child. And that is for the first time offense. But if you ask permission and you didn't get it and you still go, then you were aware that you couldn't go and still you did go. So then the fine could be a court case, for example. So don't think, oh, with 100 euros per day, it's still cheaper to go during the school week, because that's not really how it works. And the first 2 weeks of the new school year, they're not allowed to take off. So only when there's really an emergency that cannot wait, but otherwise, when you ask off for the first 2 weeks, they will say no. So also be prepared for that. also keep in mind that when the school gives you permission for a non-valid reason, they could risk to be fined as well. So randomly the inspection checks the school permissions that they gave. And especially if there are some other things that don't go well at the school, then they really dig up everything they can find. And then it can be that they say, okay, we found a lot of permissions to take off, but the reasons were not valid. And then the school can get into trouble. So it's not only you who gets a fine, but also the school. So yeah, the law is very strict. It's not that the school can really do much about it. So yeah, try and understand the position of the principal as well. And I know in secondary school, not so many things are happening anymore in the last week. So a lot of parents, they just want to leave earlier. But that's also not very smart, because it can be that your child still has to retake a test, or that they maybe not passed the year, and the teachers have to discuss about your child if they have done well enough. They have to hand in the books still, which is very important. And usually they also have some fun things planned with the whole class. And that is still school time, so that officially they're not allowed to miss that. So keep that in mind as well. So that is the first part about the school attendance law. I'm not sure I can see your questions actually. I'll try to go back with the risk to mess up everything. Yeah, you can. I can see if there's any comments. Um, so I'll write any questions, and I'll see if something happens. In the meantime, I'll continue, and I can also answer your questions later, so that's fine too. And then we go back to the presentation. Does that work? Should move up now. I'm following along with on my phone, but I don't see. Oh yeah, now it's changing. Okay, good. Okay, for secondary school, and you will, if your child is now in group 8 and they're finishing their primary school career, you will see that next year a lot of things will change. And there will still be many surprises, but maybe it's good to already know a little bit what's awaiting you and your child, of course. So I'll tell you some things that are pretty common for most schools, but in the end, every school is different. So the school's information and the website and the school guide are leading. But this is how, in general, things work. So your child needs to bring a lot of things to school. So a backpack, in Dutch, rugzak, is very much needed. And this is something you should really involve your child, because some children have very specific preferences for what kind of backpack they want to use in school. And it has to be sturdy and also cool at the same time. A lot of schools, they work with a paper agenda, with the idea that when you write down your homework, then you remember it better. Some have online agenda, others they have a combination. They call it a plenda, so to make a planning and write in their agenda. So ask the school what is required. They also need a calculator, and especially for the higher years, it needs to be pretty fancy, difficult calculator. In the beginning, not so much. So also ask them what's needed there. And they need a pencil case with some pens and pencils and a pencil sharpener, eraser, some markers. And then some other things that usually don't fit in the pencil case, but they still need to bring them as well. It's like a protractor, triangle, a pair of compasses, and then they also need some notebooks to write in, so to take notes. Some with lines and some with squares, especially a lot of math teachers, they require square notebooks. Often they also ask for dictionaries. My experience by now is that it doesn't happen too often that the children need to bring a dictionary to school. Sometimes never. I hear from other parents, so maybe you could wait buying the dictionaries, but be prepared that it can be that the teacher says, okay, tomorrow you have to bring your French-Dutch dictionary, and then, yeah, so you have a very short notice to arrange something. That happened to us, and I had to go to the bookstore right now. But maybe you can also borrow it or buy it secondhand. Sometimes they ask a specific brand and a specific version or edition, so make sure that you get the right one. And they also have physical education, so your child needs sports clothes. In most cases, they can just use any clothes they want, but it has to be comfortable, and they need to be they will be needs to be comfortable to run and to move in that. And also sport shoes, and the shoes may not have any black soles, so also pay attention to that. They can be cheap shoes, and it doesn't matter too much. They're still growing fast, so don't spend too much money on that, but it has to be comfortable and no black soles. That's the most important. For a lot of children, the secondary school is further away than the primary school. So you might also want to arrange a bike. And also here, a lot of children, they want to have a cool bike, but at the same time, it needs to be sturdy and stable. So for my son, who had to cycle a lot to school in the first 2 years, we got a very sturdy bike with a double stand, so he could easily park the bike. And what's also useful is a crate in front, because the backpack with books can be pretty heavy, and cycling like that can hurt their backs. So then a crate in front is, it's very helpful. Make sure to attach it well, because those bikes, they are usually, they don't really take very careful care of them. So make sure that they can catch a blow here and there. And another thing that's important are school books. So school books are free in the Netherlands, but for secondary school, the parents usually have to order them themselves. This also depends on the school, so make sure that you ask how that works. Most schools work together with one of two companies, so either Van Dijk or Iddink. And a lot of schools, they have sent out the emails this week for how to order books and by which day. So if you haven't done it yet, you should do it now, because they're very busy in the summer. And it's a million of kids that need to have books at the same time. So the later you order, the higher your chances that your child doesn't have all the books when lessons start. So that would be inconvenient. And another thing you need to pay attention to is that there's two types of books. There are workbooks and textbooks. In the workbooks, you may write. In the textbooks, you absolutely may not write, because the textbooks you have to hand in at the end of the school year. But when they're damaged or missing, or when your child has written in them, then you need to pay a fine, depending on the damage, and so maybe the whole amount for the book, or a portion of that. But so don't write in the textbooks. That's very important. The school recommends to use what they call kafpapier to cover the books. So that's sort of sturdy paper, and there's a special method to cover the books so that they stay nicer, and yeah, you lower your chances that they are damaged at the end of the school year. And on top of the paper, they can then put a label and then write which book it is, because with all the covers, you don't know which book is which anymore. According to my children, it's very uncool to cover books, so they have given up on that. I'm like, okay, that's fine, but any damage, when we get a bill for that, you are the one to pay it. So I always buy this kafpapier, but it's still there from 3 years ago. Then usually through those websites, Van Dijk and Iddink, you can also buy a lot of optional things like dictionaries, calculators, stationery, atlas. The atlas is for geography, so they usually ask a specific edition as well. It varies per school, it seems, if the children really need it or not. So maybe you could wait, but it could also be that second lesson of geography class, the teacher already asked to bring the atlas to school, or maybe do your homework with atlas, and then they say, okay, on page 10 you will find this information. How do you interpret that? So yeah, if you have the wrong edition or no atlas at all, you cannot do your homework. So that's very important to question as well how that works. A lot of schools, apart from books, they also require a laptop or a tablet or a Chromebook. They have specific requirements. So, and then often it's possible to buy or rent the device through school. In that case, it's usually cheaper. And when there's something wrong with the device, then the IT department can offer support, or if it doesn't work anymore, they could give you a new one. When you buy it yourself, that's of course possible as well, but then it could be that if something goes wrong, that the school cannot help with that because it's not through them. So take that into consideration. And you might also want to take insurance, so verzekering for the device, that if they are stolen or damaged, that you get repair or a new one. That doesn't come automatically, so you have to pay for that separately. It can be a lot of money at the same time, especially if you have multiple children who need one device each. And if you have problems paying that, you could ask the school if they can support. Usually they have some, they can give some discounts or subsidies, or you could ask the municipality if they can help with that. Because when it's obligatory to bring a device, then yeah, your child really needs that, both at school and at homework, for homework. There are also schools that only use books, and then you don't need the device at all. So yeah, first ask what they want from you. And then your child might also want to get a locker at school. And especially on days when they have a lot of subjects and have to bring a lot of books, then a locker can be really nice. Then in the morning they can put the afternoon books in the locker, and then during break time they swap, and then they only carry the half of the books around during the day. So that could be nice, but it's not obligatory, but yeah, I would recommend it. Then there are some other things you'll want to know. So the same as for primary school, the secondary schools also ask parental contribution. And it's usually a bit higher than primary school. So yeah, take that into consideration as well. And it's usually higher because there's often a school trip or excursion included. It's common that in the first year in the beginning of the year, they all go on camp to get to know each other and to learn how the secondary school principal works. And it depends what other things they have included. The parental contribution is voluntarily, and so you don't have to pay, but when a lot of parents don't pay, then it could be that they can do fewer projects or fewer trips or closer to home. Or so if you can, that's very much appreciated. But when it's too much, then yeah, don't feel pressure to do that. Another thing you need to know are the timetables, how that works. It's very different from primary school, because in secondary school, every day usually has a different schedule. So in the beginning of the school year, your child will get the schedule, and it will say, okay, on Monday, school starts, for example, at 8:30. Also, that varies per school. And then the first hour, you have English class. And maybe it sounds strange, but also what is 1 hour, that's also different from school to school. So it can be that the school hour takes in reality 50 minutes. So clock minutes, they call it. Some schools, they have block hours, and that means they have two classes of the same subject after each other. So then it's for 2 hours or twice 45 minutes that the children have the same class. And then next hour they maybe have geography, and then the hour after that biology. It's common that after two classes that they have a break, so usually a short break of about 20 minutes. And in the beginning, so after 2 hours in the morning, and then a longer break of 30 or 40 minutes after 4 hours of class. So, but that also depends on the school how they arrange that. And the next day, they have different subjects. It can be that it's shorter or longer than the Monday. So every day is different. And your child and yourself as a parent, you really have to get used to that. So I always tell my children, in the evening, look at the schedule for tomorrow, search the books that you need to bring to school, and your notebooks. And so every class, make sure that you know what's happening and that you have the right books with you. And then next day it will be different. So put everything in the bag that you need. Things that you don't need, you can leave at home so you don't carry them around too much. And they really need some organization in that. Another phenomenon of secondary schools is the in-between hours. And that means when the teacher is sick or there's something else, that sometimes it happens that they don't have a teacher and then class is cancelled. That happens, unfortunately, pretty frequently because there is a teacher shortage at a lot of schools in the Netherlands. And then the children are off. And it depends a bit on the school how they deal with that. It sometimes happens that they say the first year students are not allowed to leave the premises, but in other schools it's okay. So you really have to talk with your child. If you have an in-between hour, you have to come home, or you have to stay in school, or they can go wherever they want to, or to a friend's house. Some children, they go to the shopping center, or I don't like my children hanging in the center, so I always tell them, okay, it's fine if you go somewhere, but you're not going to hang around and disturb other people. I hope they don't do that. So really make good arrangements with your child, what they could do when class is cancelled. I know in a lot of countries that doesn't happen, but here it does. So it's not something to get upset about. It's just a reality you have to live with, but make sure that your child knows what to do. Ideally, they would already do some homework, but in practice, that barely happens, in my experience at least. And and when the cancelled class is over, then they have to go back to school for the remainder of the classes. Sometimes the school decides to change the schedule if that's possible. So maybe the last 2 hours you have in between when the classes are cancelled. So then the students are off earlier in the day. But that's not always feasible when a teacher has to teach other classes, of course. So since about 1 year, the students are not allowed to bring their phones to school anymore. So it varies a bit how strict the schools are, but the general rule is your phone stays at home or in a locker. Some schools say you can use it during the breaks, but it has to stay in your bag. So make sure that your child understands what happens with the phone, because you don't want to lose that. So they cannot check the schedule during school hours. So then usually they have a big screen in the canteen. So make sure that your child walks past the screen a couple of times per day so they know what's happening. And a lot of schools, they use a portal. So Magister or Some Today are the most common ones. And the parents have a separate login. And as soon as you get the login details, you should install that on your phone, because it's very important communication tool with the school. So you use the Magister Some Today app to check your child's schedule, to check their homework, to see their grades. When there's a meeting with the teacher scheduled, then you can see the dates and everything in there. And it depends a bit on the school. So when your child is sick, or when they have to go to the dentist or orthodontist at this age, that happens a lot as well. Then some schools, they want you to register that in Magister, and others, they say you have to call the school for that or send an email or whatever. So make sure that you know how that works. And it takes a little bit to install this app, but then you can use it for the whole time that your child is at that school. So that's very important and very useful. And all the information is in there. And during the break times, so a lot of schools have a canteen, and the students can buy food there, so it's not free. And in my experience, they often buy something there, but it's cheaper to go to Albert Heijn or to the snack bar. And so you see a lot of secondary school students having the break time in the Albert Heijn, for example. So also make sure that your child knows what's allowed or not, and who pays for those snacks, because that can add up quickly. And what's also common is that the class has a mentor, and that is a subject teacher who additionally also takes care of the class. So especially in the first year, they talk a lot about how do you plan your work, how do you do your homework. When there's anything happening, then the mentor is the first point of contact, also for the parents and for the students. And some schools, they also have mini mentors, and that's additional to the real mentor. And a mini mentor is usually a student from a few years earlier, so they are already a bit more experienced, but they can give the student perspective. So sometimes a child finds it a bit scary to talk to the mentor, and then they prefer to discuss something with the mini mentor instead. But that's not something that all schools do. And the mentor will invite the parents 2 or 3 times per year for a report meeting. We talk about grading in a minute. And then you usually only have a conversation with the mentor or maybe with one or two subject teachers, but it's not like primary school that you get to know all the teachers. So most of the contact goes through the mentor. And another big change from primary school is that a lot of secondary schools give a lot of homework, and it's common about 1.5 hours per day, but it really varies on the type of school and also how smoothly your child goes through the program, how much they already do in school. But be prepared that it's common to have homework every day. And usually they have to, they distinguish between doing homework and learning homework. And I always tell my children it's better to first learn the chapter and then answer the question so you know what it is about. And when you already summarize things and when you already underline things, then you are better prepared for the test, but that doesn't always work, unfortunately. But that's the idea. For the start of the school year, you have to check which is the first school day. So officially, the school year starts on a Monday, but it's very common for secondary schools that they first have a teacher training day and then a preparation day. And then Wednesday is introduction day. And then Thursday, they have some other classes. And then the first real classes start on Friday, for example. So the first school day can be a different day than you might expect. I got some questions in the past years from parents. So yeah, the school says the first school day is on a Wednesday, but my child has to go to school on Monday, right? But what time? I cannot find a time for Monday. So no, there's no school Monday and Tuesday when they say the first school day is on Wednesday. So they're still off. And in the first week, they usually also get a timetable. And that's also important to know about the timetable. So it changes every day. And after a few months, probably after the Christmas break, it could be that they get a different timetable. So they really have to keep track of that. Usually the children also get a student number and an email address. Often a student number is included in the email address. So that's something to keep in mind as well. It's common that they take a class picture and personal headshots, and the headshot often goes onto the school pass, and depends a bit on the school what they do with the school pass, maybe to make photocopies if needed or to borrow books in the library. It's also sort of identification. So they will get it as well. And the class picture is nice because in secondary school you don't really get to know your child's classmates. So then at least in the picture you can see who is who, and if your child comes home with stories about a friend, and yeah, you can get the class picture and understand who they're talking about. Be prepared that a lot of friends you won't see anymore, and especially the parents, you have no idea who they are. And usually that's not an issue, and sometimes they organize an event for parents and then you get to know some other parents as well, but much less compared to primary school. And since there are so many changes, check in the first weeks if your child understands how it all works. So do they understand the class schedule? Do they know what homework they have to do? Do they know how to plan for their tests? So my older son, for example, I bought a lot of notebooks with lines for him. And then he managed to use one notebook for several subjects at the same time. So page 1 was Dutch class, and page 2 was biology, and page 3 was math. And I was like, how do you think this works? But he had no idea. He just hadn't thought about it. Also didn't look at the whole pile of notebooks and wondered why I had bought so many if he just needed one. So just make sure that they understand how things work. I've already mentioned a couple of subjects. And some are obligatory and others are optional. So Dutch, English, and math, they are the core subjects, and every student is obliged to take them. Then in the first 3 years, the schools also have to offer 2 foreign languages besides English. Often they choose for French and German, but it can also be that one of those is changed for another language. So it's common to have Spanish, for example, but also some other languages are available sometimes. And when they go to gymnasium, then they also have Latin and ancient Greek. And in the first years, they are obliged to keep both Latin and ancient Greek, but after the 3rd year, it's allowed to drop one of them if they want to. You need to do your exams in at least one of those ancient languages, because otherwise you don't have a gymnasium program anymore, and then you just do VWO, which is also, the level is the same in the end. They also get history, geography, biology, physics, chemistry. In the 3rd year, they get usually economy, then computer science. There's some kind of technology, engineering. Sometimes they combine that with other subjects. There's physical education, social studies, visual art, music, drama, dance. And every school makes their own planning. So these are the obligatory subjects, but then how they teach them for how many hours, they have some freedom in deciding that. There are some religious schools that teach some type of religious education that also varies a lot from school to school. And some schools, they combine various subjects. So it's very common to teach the subject NASC, and that is a combination of physics and chemistry. So they teach both, but then not separated, but integrated, which often makes a lot of sense for the students. But all those things are up to the school, or they teach a project for which they combine different subjects. But in the end, these subjects are obligatory for every school. And then after the 2nd year of VMBO and after the 3rd year of HAVO and VWO, they can choose a profile, and then so some subjects are compulsory for each profile, and then they can drop some other subjects they don't like or they're not good at. Often that's the same. The grades, there's different types of tests. So you have a short verbal test that's often a surprise when they take it. So just to check if you have done your homework well, especially for the languages, they might take this short verbal test. And there's also a short written test. And then the bigger tests are called proefwerk. And there's often also some practical assignments or project work. And they usually get grades for all these type of tests or assignments. And it is common that they get a different weight. So a short test maybe counts, the grade only counts 1 time, but when it's a longer test, it maybe counts 2 or 3 times. And when it's a longer test or bigger test, then they will announce that in advance. But a shorter test, they can come as a surprise, but depends on how the teacher approaches that. And then in the end, you need to have at least an average of 5.5, which is the minimum pass grade to pass the year. And so then you have to calculate, okay, this 5 is insufficient, but it only counts once because it was a short test. And the longer test counts 3 times, and that was a 7. And then you have to calculate, so 3 times 7 plus 5, and then divided by 4, and then you have sufficient. So it's always a calculation game. And you will see all the grades in a report card that your child will get, usually 3 times per year. And then they pass the year when the overall average for every subject is 6 or higher. Often it is allowed to have one or 2 or sometimes 3 grades short of a 6, but then they need to have higher grades for the other subjects to compensate. And the core subjects of Dutch and English and math they weigh more heavily. So often you may have maybe a 5 for geography and biology to pass the year, but when you have a 5 for math and Dutch, then you fail the year. So then you have to repeat the whole year. So every year you have to pass to go on to the next grade, and then up to the final exams. So the exams are in the 4th year of VMBO, in the 5th year of HAVO, in the 6th year of VWO. And you need to pass every year, and then when you pass the final year, then you get your diploma. So the grades for the previous years, they don't count for the final exams. So every year you have to see separately. It can also be that it's a bit in between passing and failing. So that happened to my older son this year. He had to change schools, and he had a lot of things for which he didn't do so well in the beginning of the school year. In the end, he caught up a lot, but it was just not sufficient to automatically pass. But then a group of teachers discussed about his case, and then they decided he could still pass the year, luckily. And also because all the core subjects, he had a 6, so that was sufficient. So that was a big relief for us. So that is what I wanted to tell you about the secondary school. If you have any questions later, you can always let me know. Here on this page you can see my contact details, so send me an email. That's usually the best way to do it. You can also on Facebook ask me questions in the post of this webinar. That you know what to expect for next year, and that you can plan your vacations well without any issues with school. Good night. Thank you for attending this webinar, and see you soon.